Naughty Dog created an absolute masterpiece in The Last of Us, and its sequel, Part 2, is finally here. These are two completely different games, one about love and an emotional connection built between Joel and Ellie, and the other is about revenge and hate. Whichever your favourite, you can't deny the memorable moments in each, so here we're going to count down those top 10 moments from The Last of Us, Part 1 and 2. And just a heads up, there are major spoilers ahead. In Part 2, along Ellie's path for revenge, it would seem that she's completely overwhelmed by the WLF until she receives surprise assistance from her friend, Jessie.
What the hell are you doing here?
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
The pair devise a plan to steal a vehicle and escape in what proves to be a full-on action-packed ride. This set piece was intense, exciting, and things really turned up a notch when the infected become involved, creating a real sense of horror and panic, providing a moment to remember at number 10. In Part 2, after working out the WLF that were responsible, Ellie finally confronts Nora at Seattle Hospital.
You remember me? Yeah. You remember me.
Chasing Nora through the hospital provided a major shift in gameplay as it was fast, hectic, and knowing what Ellie had been through really put anticipation at an all-time high. Hoping Ellie would find the whereabouts of Abby from Nora provided an overall fantastic chase sequence, as well as a slight diversion with the infected and WLF soldiers, with Nora's inevitable fate puts this at number 9.
Because I can make it quick. Or I can make it so much worse.
In Part 1, Joel and Ellie stumble across another pair of survivors.
I'm Henry. This is Sam. I think I caught your name was Joel.
Ellie.
These four go through an awful lot together, trying to survive against the infected, against hunters, and over time they build up a real bond and connection with one another. So when it's revealed that Sam is hiding the fact that he's infected, the aftermath that followed, and Henry's decision due to the loss of his brother provided such a sad, unexpected, and surreal moment that honestly caught everyone off guard. At number 8.
This is your fault. This is nobody's fault, Henry. It's all your fault! Henry! Henry, no!
In Part 1, Joel and Ellie reach the University of Eastern Colorado in search for the Fireflies, and it's only when they reach the science building they learn that they've relocated to St. Mary's Hospital and quickly realise that they're under attack. Joel's injury was delivered brilliantly. The variation of effects, the desperation that came across from Ellie, and the suspense built throughout the entire set piece really immersed you in the moment, wondering if Joel was really going to pull through. Overall made it a moment that really stood out from Part 1. At number 7.
Get up, get up, get up. You gotta tell me what to do. Come on, you gotta get up. Joel?
In Part 2, as Abby, escaping through Haven on Scar Island was chaos at its finest and an absolute blast to play through.
Oh God! What? The horse?
Fighting through to survive with Lev and trying to escape the war between the Scars and WLF over control of Seattle created a unique gameplay dynamic, and was a set piece that had so much going on, it really stood on its own without the need of infected, plus having to deal with the big guy at the end made this an overall memorable gameplay experience with a satisfying conclusion. At number 6. In Part 2, as Abby, whilst searching for medical supplies in the basement of Seattle Hospital, we have an encounter with the ultimate infected superorganism, the Rat King. The Rat King is the big daddy of the infected, if you were, and an extremely difficult, tough, and disgusting challenge. This was an encounter that turned the horror level up to 11, and even upon defeat, it would have a backup ace up its sleeve, proving to be a truly revolting, yet fantastic boss encounter. At number 5. In part 1, with Joel out for the count, Ellie has a run-in with David, and it's not long before his true intentions are revealed.
How did you put it? Tiny pieces.
By this point, Joel is back on his feet trying to reach Ellie in time, but David has Ellie all to himself.
How did you do it?
Ellie versus David was a great standoff. It was built up brilliantly with rather psychological and disturbing circumstances which placed the tension of the encounter very high, and furthermore so knowing that Joel was seconds away. But when it was all said and done, to see Joel and Ellie reunite in the way they did was so heartwarming. It really showed us how strong the connection they had for each other was, and that love and bond along with the sadistic David created such an epic moment at number 4.
Look. It's me.
He tried to.
Oh, baby girl.
In part 2, we're presented with a flashback in which Joel takes Ellie out for a birthday surprise.
Oh my god, it is a dinosaur!
And it is.
Joel!
Surprise.
This flashback was completely unexpected after the events that had taken place up to this point, so to be able to experience this was a real treat that was very much welcome.
Hey, Joel,
Ellie.
don't you dare take it off. My birthday, my rules.
The pair of them exploring the museum together was exciting. It was full of so many feel-good moments, making it stand out from the rest of part 2 in a big way, showing us how strong that father and daughter bond had become and that they're actually happy. It gave us an overall much needed nostalgia rush that you didn't want to end. It was delivered that well. At number 3.
I do okay. You're welcome, kiddo.
Through the whole of part 1, after the outbreak, the world is very dark, bleak, full of misery, and is a constant fight for survival. Following Joel and Ellie's story, we see this throughout and have to question at some point, is it really worth fighting for, especially after Ellie's encounter with David? Her psyche is at an all-time low, and then out of nowhere, something truly magical happens.
Come here. Hurry up. Come on.
Witnessing Ellie and Joel react to the drafts was a magical moment. It restores Ellie's faith and shows that there is still hope, and this is what they're fighting for. The scene was overall delivered exceptionally, as it came across in such a strong way that every player could sit back, relax, breathe and savour the beautiful and magical moment that will forever be remembered as one of gaming's best and defining moments. At number 2.
We don't have to do this. You know that, right?
After all we've been through, it can't be for nothing.
And just before we get to our number 1, here are a few honourable mentions. In part 1, the time spent with Bill and fighting through the infected to get a vehicle going was an awesome set of events. In part 2, Dina finding out that Ellie is immune and learning that Dina is in fact pregnant created some awkward tension and really stood out amongst the sequel. In part 1, Tess revealing that she's infected, Joel's reaction and her final decision was a heartbreaking one. At the end of part 2, I believe that Abby deserved everything that was coming her way, but Ellie's decision to let her go showed us that Joel had taught her well, and that Ellie that we came to know and love was still in there with a real surprise ending. And finally, Outbreak Day in part 1, where it all began, and the loss of Joel's daughter Sarah provided a dark yet brilliant intro to the series. Our number 1 entry is a joint collaboration between parts 1 and 2. Finally reaching the Fireflies at St. Mary's Hospital, only to learn that the only way of creating a cure to the cordyceps infection was at the cost of Ellie's life. Naturally, this doesn't go down well with Joel, killing all those involved to save Ellie, yet only to lie to her when she asks what happened.
Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
That lie would eventually be revealed to Ellie and had you playing through part 2 from then on, thinking that before Joel's passing, the pair had parted ways on bad terms.
I'll go back. But we're done.
This really made you question throughout the entire story of revenge. Was it more to do with Ellie's guilt and made the experience much more difficult to bear as we'd grown so fond of the pair's relationship? Though a flashback at the very end of part 2 would reveal that before Joel's dramatic ending, things weren't quite what the story had led you to believe, revealing that Ellie would try to forgive Joel, attempting to repair that broken bridge.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
This was storytelling perfection that was paced in such a way that you never saw it coming. The ending of part 1 was a standout moment all on its own, which led to the consequences and the entire premise we'd witness in part 2. Yet for the pair to finally get together and try and rekindle their relationship was satisfying. It was the icing on the cake and it was the ultimate form of closure. This is what stood out from The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 the most, making it a moment we'll never forget, and either way you look at it, it shows you that Naughty Dog are storytelling geniuses, awarding this our number 1 spot.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
So that brings us to the end of our countdown. The Last of Us are games unlike any other and some of the finest that we'll ever experience. Not afraid to pull on players' heartstrings with Naughty Dog telling the story that they want to tell, and they certainly deliver time and time again, and who knows, maybe one day we'll see a part 3. But if you enjoyed, please remember to like, share and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated, and if you can, please stick with me because I'll be bringing a new video to you soon. Take care now, Gavinci out.